Just give me a little time. A little, tiny amount of time. It's not like I can do anything else, even if I wanted to. The situation was urgent, and it'd be a huge hassle if she ended up dead, but I couldn't stand the idea of being too hasty. I had to do something. I just had to do something. I wasn't in a position where I could run away. Even if I did, there would be no guarantee that I could escape my own destiny. I couldn't even consider abandoning this place, not now. Not for the time being, at least. So I just had to figure out what to do. All right, let's start over. I returned to the kitchen, grabbed the notebook from the table, and started writing everything that had just happened. I didn't have any notes in advance, so I used my own memory as my guide, which was why it took me a while. Okay, I've finished writing everything down, so now I'll read through it. First, we were talking about how the vampire has her arms wrapped around me. I remembered her arms wrapped around me. That feeling of being hugged by her soft skin, a small chest pressed against mine. I remembered it all very well. Next, we talked about how she said my beloved brother when she first introduced herself. Now, the next thing we discussed was the number of days in a week. Wait a minute! No. Maybe it was a good thing, because if I remembered everything as it happened, that meant I was still sane. But still, there was no way I could have forgotten something so important, right? Huh? I scratched my head. Then it came back to me. I remembered it now. My beloved brother, I muttered. My beloved brother. Isn't that? Asked the girl who just shown up and called me by my name. Isn't that what you said, Koyomi? Huh? I'm sorry, but I have to interrupt your reminiscing session there for a second. Is this really the first time you've met this girl? Because she seems awfully familiar. If she's a human, I'm surprised you'd know her so well, given how little you've ever seen her before. Huh? Oh, right. I guess you're right, but she's so... I felt like I should keep quiet about the way I'd been talking to her until that very moment, but it was already too late. So I told her what had happened. That it was the first time I'd ever met her, but she seemed so familiar. That's strange, the vampire said, putting a hand to her cheek with an amused expression. I thought you looked a little like this. A little bit? What? But that's not a very interesting reaction. So this isn't a vampire you're meeting for the first time, then? Huh? Well, let's keep going. I have a question. You said... Then you asked me if I could go out during the day. You said you'd been watching me from afar. You were watching me? That's what you said. Maybe I was being overly cautious, but since we're here now, and I can see you fine, you must be fine. Let's say that I'm wrong. The vampire put a hand to her cheek again. Then, let's get back to it. The rest of your sentence was... How do I become a vampire? Right. Yes. I nodded. It made sense she'd ask that first. Not that it made much difference to me in the end, but it seemed to be a key point in our conversation. I felt like I'd seen this somewhere before, in the course of reading something or other, but I couldn't quite remember where. Maybe in some kind of manga or light novel. There's nothing special about becoming a vampire. It's just one of those things that happens. You just have to become friends with the person you want to turn into one, then bite them. Friends. Is that the only way? Yes, that's right. It's not like anyone's going to come and bite you on a whim. The girl laughed. No one wants to be bitten by a complete stranger. I didn't know if she'd understood the full meaning of my words, but you can become a vampire as a result of a promise. In other words, there's no way for anyone to become a vampire unless they make a contract with someone. I couldn't deny what she said, but still, it was hard for me to accept her explanation as the truth. It seemed too simple. Like there was an obvious solution, and it was so clear that I had missed it. I had never heard anything like it before. That being said, there wasn't a single way to become a vampire in this world. In other words, if I had to put it in a different way, there was only one way. That was just how the world worked, or so it seemed to me. I see. That makes sense. The girl nodded. I suppose that makes sense. Doesn't it? Yes, it does. I think that makes sense. Huh. I tilted my head. Are you sure? Yes. Well, yes and no. The girl pouted as if it pained her, and smiled again. But in a way, that makes sense. So does that mean you believe it? I do. Of course I do. The girl nodded decisively. I understand how that works. If you want to become a vampire, you just have to become friends with the person you want to turn into one and bite them. What a simple explanation. I sighed. This girl, it didn't feel like she was lying. Her attitude made it seem like she believed every word she spoke, and she'd gone through the same experience herself, so it wouldn't be strange for her to have understood what had happened to me as well. It didn't feel like she was lying, but it felt like there was something off about this whole story. That's how it struck me. But if this was the case, I couldn't think of any reason why the girl would lie to me. Why would she try to deceive me? She hadn't told me any lies, but something about it still felt off. It didn't sit right with me. It just felt wrong. So I can become a vampire just by becoming friends with the person I want to turn into one? I asked, just to confirm. That's right, replied the girl with a nod. That's all there is to it. All right. I took a breath and thought about the way I felt right now. I couldn't feel anything anymore. Nothing in my body moved. Nothing at all. It felt like all of my limbs and organs were paralyzed. I wasn't sure what was going on, but my body was still in one piece, at least. That's strange. What's happening to me? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, I echoed back at the girl as she shrugged her shoulders, but I didn't have time to ask her what she meant by that. My eyes were drawn to something else. The girl had opened her mouth, and she was speaking again. When you become friends with the person you want to turn into one and then bite them. Or rather, when you become friends with someone and then have them bite you, they'll become your servant. My servant? I interrupted her. Do you mean you'll become my slave? Well, it's not exactly but yes. The girl nodded again. If you want to become a vampire, you have to become friends with the person you want to turn into one and then bite them. Then once they bite you, you'll become their servant for eternity. What? I jumped to my feet as the girl gave me a look of surprise, but the instant I did, all the strength left my body and I crumpled to the floor. No! No! This is bad. This is bad. Why? Why do I have to feel so much pain? It hurts so much I wanted to cry. No, I couldn't even cry because I was already in too much pain. It was so painful that I thought I would die from it. No, no, no! It was so painful that even if I died, I wouldn't have been able to rest in peace. What was this feeling? What was this feeling? Why did this have to happen? Why had it happened? What had happened? What had happened?